This is a 3-minute message brought to you by Redemption Church, Delray Beach. In Nehemiah chapter 6, we see an important lesson about setting our priorities. Nehemiah had been called by God to do a great and incredible work of God, to build a wall around Jerusalem. Now, this wall would serve as protection for the Jewish people and would help restore the nation and protect God's people. It was an incredible task and a hard task, but God called Nehemiah to do this. And even though he was doing this great task for God, he faced opposition. In chapter 4, we saw this. It was up front. It was people mocking him, trying to get him to stop the work, and really oppressing him to do this great work. And in chapter 6, we see opposition happen again. But it was a little bit more sneaky this time. His enemy wanted to be distracting. So rather than just making fun of him, they called Nehemiah and said, hey, you know what? Let's just compromise. Let's meet and let's just talk about what you're doing. They wanted to get him sidetracked and stop the work that God called him to do. And Nehemiah picked up on this. He said, I am doing this great work and cannot come to you. You know what Nehemiah did? He said no. He said no to the enemy. He knew he only had a limited amount of time and resources, and he didn't want to say yes to them, because by saying yes to them, he was saying no to God. God called him to do a certain work, and so he said no to others so he can say yes to God. And he kept on working, kept on building the wall. And you know what's amazing? In 52 days, the Bible says in chapter 6, he accomplished this great work. He built the wall. See, because Nehemiah set his priorities, he accomplished great things. He had to say no to others and distractions so he can say yes to what God had called him to do. And it made me think, have we set our priorities straight? Have we asked God, what has he called us to do? Because this will help us say no and yes. It will help us decide what we're to do with our life. There's nothing greater than doing the things that God has called us to do. And so we need to ask God, God, what have you called me to do? What work do you want me to do? Now, there will still be opposition. There will still be hardship in that calling. But we can know by pleasing God, we'll have the best life that we can ever imagine. We can set our priorities to the things God called us to do and make a difference in this world. Even if that requires us to say no to others and even good things, so we can say yes to God and the great things that he has for us. And so may we continue to follow after the things God's called us to do. May we be faithful, and may we set our priorities on God, telling him yes and others no, and staying focused on the things that he has called us to do.